How about the Penguins?
Dude, I'm telling you, I'm not sure what I was expecting last night. It wasn't that. Like,
Yeah.
it's weird though because it feels like the reasons that the Penguins won, knowing what we know about the Penguins, is more why the Rangers lost, and that's because of Mike Sullivan being Mike Sullivan.
Maybe he was the problem all this time, man.
I mean, if all 82 games look like last night, then probably because I mean it I don't know. It didn't look. I mean, it was a boring game. Let's be honest. It was very much a grind it down, don't do anything fancy type of game for the Penguins. And the Rangers, for whatever reason, could not score with all the arsenal that they had.
Yeah, yeah. Well, apparently, Sullivan leaned on the fact that JT Miller was hurt in the preseason, and Panarin only got he only had a short training camp, so came up with excuses. But a win is a win is a win, man.
It is a win. Also, and I know we need to get to the episode eventually, but it was it just me, or did he not look like he wanted to be there last night in regards to Sullivan? Like, I saw the dialogue he did pregame in the locker room, and then the interview that they did with him on the bench. He just seemed very stiff and just stressed out, like he did not want any part of this particular situation.
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't really observe that so much. I only caught from the second period on, and I didn't really pay attention to any intermission stuff. So, I mean, maybe just he was just like, man, this is really awkward. This is weird. Get me out of here. Maybe it's a fact that he was facing his old team and he just got anxiety about it. Maybe that's the reason why the Rangers just blew it. Who knows?
Who knows? But it seems like last night for Mike Sullivan was a misstep in the great expectations that the Rangers have for him.
I respect that, man. I respect that. And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. And the way that we measure that title is we go from Ukraine, we travel to Uganda, but we take the long way around. This podcast is called Hey, Listen to This. And it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I'm the one. I am the only. I'm the one who actually turns out is going to be a huge Carolina Hurricanes fan due to one of his fantasy hockey drafts, basically resulting in him drafting four Carolina Hurricanes players, Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only. It doesn't matter how many players I drafted from the team, I'm still a fan of the first place, undefeated Pittsburgh Penguins, Matthew James Durzik. And for those of you who don't know what it is we talk about here on Hey, Listen to This, it's actually not hockey. It's actually music, and it's right there in the title. It's called Hey, Listen to This. Every week, me and Ryan talk about an album of our choice. We discuss it track by track, note by note, lyric by lyric. We go over what we like, what we don't like, what we thought could be improved, what we thought stood out, and our overall thoughts at the end of the episode, where we give our ratings, recommendations, and all that fun stuff. And speaking of fun stuff, Ryan, what did we talk about last week?
So we took a look at the debut studio album released in 1967 by The Doors. It was self-titled, so kind of The Doors by The Doors.
Yeah.
And for me, I had one hell of a good time, dissecting that album. When like I talked about in the review, first time in the history of Hey, Listen to This, unless I'm mistaken, which I don't believe I am, that we are specifically talking about one of my favorite bands of all time. So yeah, excellent time. I had a fun time with that review. How about you, Matthew?
Oh, I had a great time talking about it as well. It's an album that, as I found out, both of us had appreciated since our high school days, which were not in the same year that the album was released. We're much younger than that. But it was fun to revisit the album nonetheless. And for those of you who have not checked out the album or the review, I highly recommend checking out both. Album first, then the review, so you can compare your opinions with ours. And yeah, it was a really, really fun episode just to revisit. Oddly enough, one of the older albums we've talked about, and yet an album that still feels somewhat fresh today, which is kind of ironic.
And that gives that album specifically enough weight, and like it's a testament in its own right on how impactful and how important that album is in terms of like the overall grand scheme of music here. So let me check my notes here to see what we're covering this week. And okay, well apparently I might have picked this album here. Hold on. No, wait, hold on. It says that you picked this album, man. So why don't you let the listeners know, where where we're going with this bit here?
Very, very cheeky indeed, Mr. Kearns. So what Ryan is alluding to is thus. So for those who have not been following along with our show episode by episode, first of all, would recommend. It's a good time. Secondly, 2 weeks ago, I brought forth my last album for review, which was a mixtape by Wiz Khalifa entitled Kush and Orange Juice. And without getting too deep into the details as of why, it was rather one of the more disagreeable albums we've ever had, which statistically it is the most disagreeable we've ever had rating-wise, and just palette-wise, I'm pretty sure it's pretty close. Ryan didn't quite appreciate the album as much as I did, and I didn't have to apologize for it, and I'm not necessarily apologizing for liking that album, but after he had brought back-to-back albums in The Doors and Marquee Moon by Television the week before Kush and Orange Juice, I figured, you know what? Here's an olive branch. Here is some almsgiving. I am going to reach out and talk about an album and a band that Ryan will appreciate. And he had two choices, and the choice that he made was to go back to 2008 and talk about the band The Gaslight Anthem and their sophomore effort entitled The 59 Sound. And that is why it sounds like this is something Ryan would pick, because, well, we'll probably figure out why in due time. But before we get into all of that, and particularly Ryan's background with the Gaslight Anthem, and mine as well, the first question has to be asked. What is a Gaslight Anthem? Well, I'm sure if you go on Twitter these days, you'll probably find many different variations of that. But what is the Gaslight Anthem? Well, they are a band that comes to us from the great state of New Jersey. And this band consists of 4 members, the foremost of which being vocalist and guitarist Brian Fallon. Now, before they became the Gaslight Anthem, they did the same thing that most rock bands do. They played in other bands, they shuffled lineups a little bit, and as we've been wont to do in the past here on the show, Ryan, what was the name of the Gaslight Anthem before they became the Gaslight Anthem?
Oh man, I feel like I should know this, but for the lack of, well, I'm just for the lack of making this an entertaining bit, I'm gonna say Bruce Springsteen's G Street Band.
Good guess. Educated guess, but no. No, the name of the band before the Gaslight Anthem that Brian Fallon was in, that would eventually become the Gaslight Anthem, was called This Charming Man. And that's what it was before they changed the lineup to include the rest of the band, which at the time of the 59 Sound consisted of Benny Horowitz, Alex Levine, and Alex Rosamilia. And they released their first album after their first gig, which was in early 2006. Their first album came out in 2007, entitled Sink or Swim. And right away, you kind of got what this band was all about. Very much a rootsy style that harkened images back to the days of the 1950s when kids were growing up in the heartland of America, watching movies in black and white and, dragging roadsters through the streets, etc., etc. And they did that with song titles such as I Could Have Been a Contender or I'd Have Called You Woody Joe, just as a couple of examples. And with that first release, they started to form their identity. They started to form their sound. They were a bit more punkish at the time, but their album got good reviews, and so they figured, well, let's shift on over to the next one, and that brings us to the next one, which is the 59 Sound, released in 2008. And this album would become a big success for them, not necessarily in a monetary sense, because 2008, we're still in the era of your Kanyes, your Fall Out Boys, your Jay-Z's. Coldplay was big at the time, Kelly Clarkson, and basically the mainstream had a grasp on pop and hip-hop, not so much on rock, which was becoming less and less mainstream with each passing year, particularly hard rock of the variety that was popular in the 70s, 80s, et al. But critically, this album was very successful, so much so that the site eMusic rated it the number one album of 2008, which is not a small feat considering some of the albums that were released in that same year. So that is a little bit of a preview of what we'll be talking about today with the Gaslight Anthem. And Ryan, I turn it over to you. What is your experience with the Gaslight Anthem heading into today's episode?
So my first proper introduction to the group came through the way of... You remember MySpace?
Yes, I do remember MySpace. Thank you for catching me off guard there. But yes, I do remember MySpace.
So, yeah, my... If he's listening to this episode right now, shout out to him. But my cousin Matthew, he put one of their songs on his MySpace page. And, he was somebody that I had a lot of respect for. I really liked his music taste. He introduced me to, groups like Manchester Orchestra, just to throw one name out there. And so, yeah, I checked it out. And if I'm not mistaken, it was the 59 Sound, the title track off the album that we're talking about here today. And I really did enjoy it. So, like you do, I properly downloaded the album, if you know what I mean. And I listened to it head to toe, and at the time, it didn't really sink its teeth into me up until the point that I got into college, and I revisited that album, and I was just like, you know what? This is some good stuff here, man. And then I really didn't revisit the group a whole lot until they released their album Handwritten, because the lead single off of that record, 45, was a fantastic single. And that whole album by itself is another great Gaslight Anthem album. But whenever that album was rolling out, I decided to dive back into the album that we're talking about today, and then checking out the album that you were talking about a little bit earlier, Sink or Swim, and kind of dabbled throughout the rest of their discography. I did see them live once, and they did do a very effective performance. I was a fan of it. I saw them during their Get Hurt tour, so yeah, that was fun. So yeah. Would I say that they're one of my, would I give them the distinction of, one of my favorite bands? No. But they are a band that I highly enjoy. I can always go back to them and just They're good. It's good, repeatable music for me. So yeah, so that's my experience with the group and my background with them. I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Matthew. What is your experience with the Gaslight Anthem?
So, my experience with the Gaslight Anthem kind of stems from your experience with the Gaslight Anthem, ironically enough, because I had never heard of this band up until during our college days. You decided to give Handwritten the ranking, and I believe it was a changed ranking, if I'm not mistaken, to be your number one album of the year that it was released, which would have been 2011 or 2012.
As like I am vamping here to find out when the album was released properly. Oh man, that actually brought up a Shawn Mendes album. Man, that makes me want to throw up. 2012.
Okay. So yeah, in 2012, you had named Handwritten the number one album of the year, and so I was like, okay, Ryan has good music taste. I'm going to, keep that band in mind. I'm not sure if I'm going to listen to them, but, something to consider. And then one day, several years later, I had stopped by a thrift store in downtown Beaver Falls called Barkins, and they had a CD section, and I was just perusing through them because they had like a dollar, $1.50 or something, relatively cheap. And I saw this album that we're talking about today on the shelf, and I was like, oh, the Gaslight Anthem. I remember them. I remember Ryan talking about them, so I was like, you know what? I'll take a shot. I'll take that lottery ticket of a chance with this band. So, listened to the album, liked it quite a bit, and like you did with Marquee Moons several weeks ago, I put that CD in the metaphorical freezer to just sort of chill there for a while, and didn't really come back to it until many years later. But it is one of those albums that I have sort of picked up every now and then to be like, you know what, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. So, how good stuff is it? We are about to find out in oral and possibly written form over the course of these 12 tracks that we are about to talk about.
And dear listener, you're gonna find out in an audio form on how how we feel about it. So, yes. Without any further ado, I feel like I'm ready. I feel like I'm ready to dive headfirst into the 59 sound. So I'm gonna let you take the lead here with the opening track, which is Great Expectations. Matthew, kick us off.
So, Great Expectations, talking about kicking things off, starts with this sort of very indie-ish, indie light sample where you hear this keyboard riff sort of go do 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 do. It's very light, almost like an alarm clock, and then out of nowhere, bam! Everything kicks into high gear. Vocals, guitars, drum and bass, and right away you get the elements that this album is going to be basing itself on. The loud guitars that sound loud without any major anger, and the drums, honestly, some of the better produced drums I've heard in quite a while. Like, they're produced clean, they're produced loud, they're produced not necessarily out front where it's overbearing everyone on the mix, but it fits in nicely with the sound of the band. This is a very, very well-produced song on what, for the most part, is a very, very well-produced record. And also along with the band, you get the voice of Brian Fallon, very rustic, very gravelly in his nature. And here you get a song where you get a lot of allusions to the works of Hemingway. You get a lot of allusions to living life on the street. And while I admit that the verses where he's talking about all these allusions do get a little wordy and tend to pigeonhole references from time to time in a way that's kind of like, hey, remember this? Yeah, that. Cool. I will say the chorus on the song is fantastic, because the chorus is basically about how Fallon had a dream where the people in his life went away and he saw taillights, which is a sign of, hey, we're leaving now, goodbye. And he's retelling this story about this dream to somebody and says, listen, everybody in my life has left me behind, so why wouldn't you? And that repeated refrain of why wouldn't you is so deep and it hits very well. So right out of the gate, musically it sounds great. Lyrically, it's a little haphazard, but for the most part, it's still very good. And Fallon is doing, I wouldn't say he's gone full Springsteen yet, but he is getting close. Because as we mentioned at the top, this band is from New Jersey, therefore Springsteen, therefore the world. So Great Expectations is a good start to this album. It did not land in my top 3. And for full disclosure, I have a top 3 and a bottom nada.
And for me, the same. I have a top 3 and a bottom nothing. So, and with Great Expectations here, like, you did an excellent job laying the framework out with what makes this track here so effective. And the overall song for me, like, what makes it really just impactful, you were talking about the lyrics a little bit, and you hit the note right on the head when you were talking about the chorus and how, like, you know, the taillights in a dream last night, like, you know, that was the lyrical highlight for me. So the way that I basically kind of, like, took the whole song on a lyrical sense was, you know, you are looking at your past and your past experiencing, and you're experiencing nostalgia, but with a sense of regret that impacts your present. So, like, essentially, like, guilt for, like, you know, how things have become. Like, you know, everyone has great expectations on how their life is going to turn out, but, you know, life slaps you in the face with a fish. So, yeah, and I think that's what makes this song here, and, like, I would say even, like, the Gaslight Anthem as a whole, such a intriguing band for me, because, like, you know, on one hand you get, like, you know, melancholic lyrics, but on the flip side, the energy that's being brought in the instrumentals here, like you alluded to, is absolute fire, dude. Like, you know, this is what I would consider, like, you know, this whole album, but, like, especially this song here, I would consider this to be perfect. And when I mean perfect, I mean perfect driving music in terms of, like, the amount of energy that you can get while, like, just, like, going down the highway and just blasting this. So it's just an interesting dichotomy there. And a couple other points I want to, like, highlight here. One thing that I really did enjoy on how this whole track kicks off is the needle drop sound effect. I know that might be a little cliche within the world of, like, you know, music, and maybe, like, you know, indie music at, like, you know, as a whole. But as somebody who has listened to a fair amount of records on his you know, turntable, I'm looking at it right now. Like, that always, like, you know, scratches an itch for me, and especially with an album called The 59 Sound, and it's talking about, like, nostalgia and everything like that. That's a perfect execution there. And yeah, outside of that intro, just the overall, like, impact of the band, they're creating such a charging energy, and, like, the main feature here, you highlighted for me was the drum performance. Like, the drum performance on this track is just so good. Like, there's throughout the record, we're gonna get different moments where different parts of the instrumentation gets featured. Here, the drums are taking the charge, and outside of those moments, the chorus, like, for me, it just flows so nicely, and, like, in my head, I mean, I might be imagining or just trying to, like, you know, like, you know, force myself to imagine whenever I saw this song live, like, at certain points in the chorus, like, there was almost like hand claps at the ends of certain phrases that would have just been a nice little, like, you know, live touch. I might be imagining things. I am a little bit crazy. Go Canes. So, And then another thing I just want to highlight though overall is just the bridge is very effective. It does a good job like dropping down the tempo and just building it back up. I mean, that's essentially what a bridge is supposed to do, just to really kick you back into like the rest of the track. And the outro is pretty good, cool too, where like it just seems like everything's winding down. You get the chimes that are playing, and yeah, I have nothing else to say about Great Expectations except for the fact that it did land in my top 3. It is my second favorite track off the whole record.
Mad respect, mad respect. This is one of those tracks where, if not for a few that are coming up down the line, I probably would have considered for a top 3 spot. In fact, the only 2 spots on this list that I really had in good ranking for sure were 1 and 2. 3 could be very interchangeable based on the day. And Great Expectations is one of those songs that could easily duke it out with a few others for that number 3 spot. I respect the fact that Great Expectations did land in your number 2 spot. And with that, I'm ready, if you are, Ryan, to pivot on over to the number 2 track on the album. Maybe not your number 2 favorite, but the number 2 track, because it is the second track on the album. And that is the title track, entitled The 59 Sound.
So, yeah, this song here, it's an excellent follow-up to the previous track. And so, with the 59 Sound, like how I highlighted with Great Expectations, like the thing that I was gravitated towards for the most part in that track on the instrumental front was the drums. Here, it's the guitar. The guitar tone and the whole intro there isn't like really complex, but the way that it's produced. And by the way, before we go on about giving more kudos to the production on this LP, shout out to Ted Hutt. I kind of did do a drive-by of his production discography, and it seems like he was mainly associated with the label that this came off, like that released this record. So you get like a lot of punkish records in his discography, like stuff from like Flock and Molly's and Dropkick Murphys. So the dude knows how to produce pretty effectively. So shout out to him. He did a really good job. So yeah, outside of the guitar tone, I like the group here knows how to write an effective chorus. It pops off quite nicely. And I do like how in the chorus, like the guitar and the drums are doing a really good job lighting up the instrumentals in the background. I love that. And also, I'm not gonna give enough credit to Brian Fallon's vocals throughout the whole record, but here I really did enjoy his work on the chorus and throughout the whole track, honestly. He does do a great job. And then outside of the chorus, the other thing that I did like about this track was the pre-chorus. I found it to be so cool with the repetition of the phrase, because the chains I've been hearing now for most of my life, and the chains I've been hearing now for most of my life. That was a cool moment. And then you kick into the chorus. And then another thing I do want to highlight with the 59 Sound is this song is actually about a friend of Brian's who died in a car crash, which adds a whole new level of appreciation for the track. I mean, you take a look at the opening verse. Well, I wonder which song they're going to play when we go. I hope it's something quiet, minor, and peaceful and slow. And then in verse 2, and I wonder, were you scared when the metal hit the glass? So, yeah. There's a lot of good descriptors of the car crash, and shout out to Brian Fallon on his lyric writing. He does do a very effective job painting a portrait of what's going on within the whole track here. And outside of that context, though, the only thing I gotta highlight about the track here specifically is, again, I did like the bridge. It was great, and I do love how it just builds the back half of the whole song so effectively. Only other thing I got to mention about the 59 Sound before I kick it over to you is we've arrived. And another favorite track off the whole record for me, the 59 Sound is my third favorite track off the whole LP.
Wow, 2 songs in and 2 out of 3 have been claimed. That's a strong starting album. That's not often that either of us really have 2 tracks in our top 3 that early. And in this case, not my top 3 because this did not land in my top 3, but it's another one of those tracks that could have been dogfighting for that number 3 spot, because I know you mentioned the guitar, and I think I understand why, because ironically enough, the one thing I picked up on this track right away was the drums, like you did with Great Expectations, because you get that just cranking snare intro with the blaring 16ths that really kick into high gear, but then when the drums enter with its main beat, the guitar pretty much is right on top of that with it. So you get the drums doing the 16ths on the hi-hat, and the guitar is going, and that is what sets the guitar out front for this track and creates, as they say, the 59 sound of just hard-hitting, old-school, slicked hair back, leather jacket, rock and roll. So the band, once again, sounds great on here, and like you said, Brian Fallon not only does a good job singing it, but he does a great job writing it too, because those lyrics on that chorus where he's talking about, did the angels come? Did you hear the angels when they came for you? It's not easy, as Jim Morrison would like everyone to believe, to write about death, and particularly to write about the death of someone you know. So I think there is a reverence to the song that is very, very intelligent, respectful, and very artistic too. Like, it sounds great, and it is funny you mentioned how those opening lines about playing something soft and in a minor key contrasts so boldly with the sound of this band on this song and on this album. I did appreciate that irony there too. The only real knock I can say about this song, and it's not even really that much of a knock considering how good the first song was, is that it kind of just sounds like a sequel to Great Expectations, which is not a bad thing because Great Expectations is in and of itself a very good song. So, 59 Sound, great title track. I can understand why it was released as the main sound. I can understand why Rolling Stone named it one of the songs of the year, but didn't quite do enough to get into my top 3.
And one of the things I want to comment on before we kick it on over to Old White Lincoln is the statement that you made, the 59 Sound sounds basically like a sequel to Great Expectations. And I absolutely agree with you, man. Like, I again might be coming from a biased standpoint when reviewing this album. Not that I produced it and recorded it myself, because if I did, I would be a much well-off man at this moment. But like, I'm a huge fan of this album, a huge fan of this band. But I'm like, as I was digging into a lot of the further tracks as well that we haven't yet to discuss, I do recognize the fact that a lot of the tracks kind of start to blend together. And for me, like, I've listened to this LP enough that I'm able to pick up on little things here or there that make it not so album tracky for me, or stuff doesn't get lost in the wash, as one would say. But I totally understand what you were getting at with it does sound like a sequel to Great Expectations, but it's a good song nonetheless.
It very much is a good song, and certainly, again, if you're ripping off yourself, you may as well rip off something good, and they did here. But that being said, pivoting on over to track 3, which is Old White Lincoln. Now, this track is a very good track too, because to me, one of the things I noticed on the second go through of this album for me that I really did appreciate was how a very slight switch in execution made all of the difference. So you mentioned how Great Expectations was fueled by the drums and how the 59 Sound was fueled by the guitar. This one is very much driven by the bass on this. And I noticed that immediately, and I was like, wait a minute. This is a neat little trick that they did. because even though the tempo hasn't really changed, the key has, which is nice. The only real difference is the fact that they put the bass out front to do the majority of the shredding, for lack of a better term, on this track. And what that does is it modernizes their sound without really changing their sound. It's a very, very weird thing because the first two tracks very much sound like I said, very slick back hair, leather jacket, good old fashioned rock and roll. But having the bass put out front, all of a sudden this song, which very much still is about old school farmland, heartland shenanigans, all of a sudden sounds like something that you could possibly fit in with the sounds of indie rock from the mid 2000s, like The Killers or an Arcade Fire or an Of Montreal. So yeah, I was taken aback, but I was like, whoa, that is a very slick move, and I very much appreciate that. And as far as the rest of the song, same things can be said that has been said before. Fallon sings good. I want to call him O Fallon. I don't know why, but it's just Fallon. The rest of the band sounds great, especially that bass. And the lyrics themselves, I thought were probably some of the better ones on the album too, about how Fallon's hanging out with this rebel girlfriend or rebel friend that has tattoos, and they're out in the fields, revving up cars, racing in the street, and just getting into all sorts of wild, don't care about tomorrow type shenanigans. And I thought it was very, very effective. And I also do like the intro to the song with the sound of the car starting up. I thought that was a nice little touch. I mean, obviously it's a song about an old white Lincoln, so, why not, right? But the fact they did that and then ended it with the same sound effect, I thought that was a nice touch as well. The only unfortunate thing is that, once again, we have a song that comes close, but does not land in my top 3.
And that's totally fair. I mean, spoiler alert, this isn't my favorite song off the whole record. I mean, that would be, quite insane if I'm like, yeah!
That would be insane.
Yeah. Oh, man, that would be insane, man. But anyways, so yeah, Old White Lincoln. I'm just going to comment on a couple of the things that you've already touched upon, because you did a really good job laying out the framework once again. I'm absolutely in agreement with you in terms of like how effective Alex Levine is doing with just being the driving force in this track here. Like it is refreshing because, like, yes, you can make 12 songs that basically have the same effect of Great Expectations and 59 Sound, but to do this kind of song following that and bringing the tempo down just a little bit, but keeping the focus and the intensity still there is an absolutely effective move from my point of view. And the drive away effect at the start that you mentioned, I did enjoy that as well, and especially the old man yelling, "Get out of the car, long hair!" Like that was fun, man. I did enjoy that. And just the only other thing I got to really mention, the chorus, like a couple more things I got to mention here. The chorus here grooves very effective. I just love how it feels like you're driving at night when that chorus is hitting. Like it's just so peaceful and so like free. And speaking about being free, like this song here for me, the way I took a look at the lyrics, like you kind of alluded to, this is Brian, looking back at a simpler time in a relationship, but like for me, I saw that this relationship is no longer occurring, like they broke up, so he's looking back with a twinge of bitterness. But like there was one line that kind of changed my thoughts about like Brian's mindset at the time, and that line is whenever he's talking about the sky up above these indifferent stars. So he's taking a grander view about everything within the world and being like, hey, yeah, I might be experiencing nostalgic regret here about how things turned out and how my life used to be. But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. So let me just try to find peace with that and just try to move on. and one last thing. So in this track here, thanks to headphone listening that I did, I picked up that there were garbage cans that were being played in this track here, and like in the liner notes as well. Like they do credit the drummer in the track here with playing garbage cans. So yeah, that's fun.
Metallica would be proud. So yeah, yeah. I didn't think about it. That does make sense that a garbage can would be part of the sound of, again, Summer Shenanigans. It's funny that you mentioned that the chorus has this feel of driving at night, because that's not what I got from it. To me, this is a song. We talked last week on the Doors episode about how you have those long summer days where you're just getting into hijinks, and then all of a sudden at the end of the day you have this long, sweaty, sweltering feeling of just being exhausted and wanting to go home, but you can't. To me, this song feels like the first part of that, before you get sweaty, before you're just done with the day, where you're enjoying the day and just getting into whatever you can get into. That's kind of the vision I had. To me, this is more of a daylight song than a nighttime song, but that's just different interpretations. All in all, I think we both come to the same conclusion that this track does in fact kick some ass.
Indeed, man, indeed. So, shuffling on over to the next track, which is Lonesome. So, with this track here, we picked the tempo back up in terms of like on the instrumental palette, like like we alluded to with the previous track, Old White Lincoln. Like we turned down the tempo a little bit, but we kick it back up here, especially coming right out of the gate with the drum roll that kicks everything off, and it like that drum roll basically kind of bleeds into the band, establishing the main groove. And the main groove itself is pretty nice. I did appreciate what was being brought there, but for me, like that groove, I would consider to be the default like speed, like the for those of you who drive, which is probably the most of you who are listening to this podcast right now, this is basically just going and drive and just like going like 60 on the highway in terms of like the band sound. Like this is their default sound on that groove. So outside of vamping on about that groove for ad nauseum, the chorus here I did like. It was pretty good. And one little nerdy thing that I found within the chorus that I really dug was the guitar part. I felt like it was almost echoing the vocals, and I felt that to be really cool. Like, I'm always a fan. It's a Ryan Kern's musical kink, but whenever the vocals are echoed by an instrument within a track, and here I felt like that's pretty cool. Especially, it's not a very pronounced sound, but if you listen in, you were rewarded for your efforts. And outside of the chorus, like I also did appreciate the guitar work that was occurring in the verses, and also shout out to Brian's vocals and how they are recorded, like in general, like we've talked a lot about like Brian's mindset and like the lyrics that he has been writing. It's like nostalgic, but like looking on a simpler time, but with like a twinge of regret, like a bittersweetness. And like the way that the vocals are recorded, it is the perfect way to get that feeling across. Like it's a very like very lonesome, very blue kind of thing, but with like a little bit of energy behind it. So I love the way that the vocals are recorded. And so after the bridge, I do like in this track how everything's just so chaotic. Right before the start of the next chorus, like I thought that was pretty cool, pretty unique, instead of just writing the formula of like just bridge. Okay, go back into the chorus and just don't think twice. It's all right. Just keep on going. And yeah, the only other thing I gotta talk about here is the lyrics here. And this song here, I took it as a like a descriptive of how life changes and how you end up living a different life. And for me, like one of my favorite lyrics off the track came where the section where he was talking about, so gravity came and stole the temple that the schoolboys praised, and the crowd shuffled in. You're getting drinks for the same boys who once bought you everything. So yeah, for those of you who maybe need a little bit of a digging into that, hot girl, high school, life hit her, her body changed, and now she's a bartender and she's pouring drinks for the same kind of people that once like bought her drinks. So yeah, I felt that was a pretty impactful set of lyrics there. So yeah, not much else to say about High Lonesome. What are your thoughts about this track, man?
My thoughts about High Lonesome are, first of all, it sounds very good. It does start to get a little bit repetitive. I mean, because I know I said the 59 sound was repetitive, but it was literally repeating one track. So I'm not going to fault it for sounding the same as, the first fresh sound, It's because one of those things like, hey, you did it, well, do it again, Especially when we're talking about emulating the quote-unquote 59 sound, as we talked about a few months ago with the Little Richard episode. Repeating the same sound over and over again may not be the worst idea. So in a sense of classic rock and roll, that's the vibes that they're going with here. But this time around with High Lonesome, it does feel like the third time around is even less fresh, but it still sounds very good. And I do agree that the guitar and the drums once again sound great, and Fallon particularly sounds great on this track because he is doing probably the most Springsteensian vocals that he has done so far in this track. Although, oddly enough, the lyric on the track that is most notable for me is a lyric that they interpolated / stole from the Counting Crows of all bands, which is in the chorus where Fallon is singing about, wanting to look a little like Elvis or wishing he looked like Elvis. And it's just like, at first I was like, okay, well, that's just sort of, them harking to this ideology that they're creating with the 59 sound and the late 50s lifestyle. And then I come to learn from Genius.com, oh wait, they're just lifting a lyric from a Counting Crows song, and one of the more popular ones at that, entitled Round Here. So I was like, that's interesting. But you know what? The Counting Crows are a decent bit of source material, as good as anybody else, so why not? But yeah, aside from that, Fallon does sing very well, and I do appreciate your interpolation of that one set of lyrics, because it is funny to hear about how, sometimes you're the king of the hill, or in this case, the queen of the hill, and then all of a sudden you're back in the village, far from that top of the hill, and it just comes full circle in a way you don't expect. But yeah, this track is good. Not quite as high on it as the other three so far, and once again, it did not land in my top three.
I would definitely put this track in the bucket of, okay, guys, we get it. We know what you can do. Like, that bucket. So, like, for lack of a better descriptor, like, it's a good song bucket, but we'll call it the Gaslight Anthem song bucket for a proper descriptor.
That's a very, very proper descriptor. And like you said, it does become very much the Gaslight Anthem sound, because it's one thing to not change up the tempo or the sonic style, but for 3 out of the first 4 songs, they haven't even changed the key. And that is both impressive and slightly aggravating at the same time. Thankfully, though, things do change on the next track, which is the first slow track on the album, and that is Film Noir. And here you get a sound that's a little bit more stripped back and a little slower, but not necessarily lacking in intensity. And it's a solid song, too. You get a bit more of a bluesier feel on the guitar and a bit more of a swing feel. Not a swing as in like high tempo jazz, but slow swing blues. And feeling a little melancholic, which again they've done already on this album lyrically is be melancholy, but this time it slows things down to match that melancholy, and rightfully so because the lyrics on this track do have a bit of a melancholic feel to it, sort of similar to Great Expectations. The only difference being it's a little bit more personal and a little bit more direct. And when I say a bit more direct, I'm saying that Great Expectations, its main fault was that it had a lot of just random allusions thrown in there. This one does have allusions in there too, but it feels like it fits more the theme of an old school love that didn't go right. And to Fallon, this idea of this woman in his life is, talks about having Monroe hips, akin to Marilyn Monroe, and he just has this feeling of a light burning inside of him that's sort of fading out, but he still may want it there. Weirdly enough, thinking about this track, I am reminded of a band that doesn't fit the scene of the Gaslight Anthem or this type of music at all. And that is an artist we talked about not too long ago, Ryan, and that is Joy Division. Because for whatever reason, I'm envisioning the same sort of melancholic feel for his significant other that Ian Curtis felt for his on Closer. Not quite to the same darkness level that Ian had, but it has that same sort of slow down frustration or exhaustion that album portrayed. All of that to say, I did dig Film Noir, but once again, first 5 tracks out of the gate, and not one of them has landed in my top 3.
I'm curious to see what is in your top 3. Obviously, we'll get to it when we get to it, but yeah. So, I have a sneaking suspicion that my top track might be in your top 3, but I've, had those films before, and I've misfired. But getting back to the point of Film Noir, which is the track that we're talking about here, I agree with you with the shift change here with that blues kind of country kind of western kind of swing here. It's a very effective way to change up the flow and the pacing of the album here so far. Because if they went with another song that basically went into the Gaslight Anthem song bucket, maybe my attention span might have dwindled here a little bit, because I'm like, dude, I get it. You can you like Tom Petty and you like Bruce Springsteen. I get it, man. But just a couple of little points I want to touch upon is just for me, the highlight of the track here is the chorus. It just grooves so effectively, and the way that the band actually is able to bring up the dynamics leading up to the chorus is just really great. It's very subtle, but it's very effective nonetheless. And once again, I was a fan of the bridge that was executed here, and I just love how the way that here in the bridge that the change up in the instrumentals allow the song to change moods, but the lyrics stay the same. So the lyrics were the ones that you were kind of alluded to. I talked about Monroe hips. It changes up styles from being very kind of bombastic to very solemn and very melancholic, which is basically the two sides of Gaslight Anthem that they've been portraying to the listener so far. So kudos to them. I did appreciate that bridge. Very effective. And the only thing I got to talk about is just the meaning behind the song. Guys and girls and everybody who identifies as anything in between, this is a song about looking back at a relationship. Shocker. We've identified that this is basically Brian Fallon and the Gaslight Anthems, MO off this record. But the way that I did appreciate the track for what it was the chorus that you kind of alluded to, where he was talking about like lighting a fire that wouldn't go out, and I just that whole section was a lyrical highlight for me because it's sometimes in life, sometimes in love, you light a fire that just doesn't go out until it consumes like everything that's supposed to be safe for you and everything that's supposed to provide you security. And before you know it, you're just standing in a pile of ashes where everything that you thought you held dear was burnt away. So yeah, I did like that. But Film Noir did not land in my top three because there's only one spot left, and I think I might have gushed about it a little bit more if it was my favorite track off the record.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I mean, again, the best thing I could say about this song is that A, it sounds good, and B, it sounds different from the styles that we had previously experienced with 3 out of the first 4 tracks that preceded it. But yeah, Film Noir again. Nice slow burn of a track. Very, I would say if you're a fan of the likes of like Allman Brothers or Joe Bonamassa, this might be more the kind of track for you compared to the harder rock and chaos of the first 4 tracks. So moving on to the final track in the first half of this album, which is Miles Davis and the Cool. And Ryan, we have talked about Miles Davis before on this show. How does this song pertain to that?
Well, like Miles Davis, Brian Fallon has been swayed by the Cool. I was just trying to come up with a pun there, but yeah, I mean, this song is written, according to Genius, it's written about Miles Davis himself. Which, I mean, I kind of can see that. I mean, you do reference Miles, like, throughout the song. But for me, like, the way that I took the song meaning and the lyrics, it was basically about Brian trying to seduce a potential lover. And, like, this other person isn't as keen to jump into a relationship with Brian, but he's willing to wait for her, and he's going to leave the front light on for her to come home to him. So yeah, and like when we're talking about like home, like it's not talking about like a literal home, it's like a metaphorical home, like come home to like into a relationship with me where you can be safe and like you can just be yourself. So yeah, even though, like, Genius.com says that this is written about Miles Davis, I would contest that from my own, analytical brain and my mindset. But, who am I? But a Carolina Hurricanes fan. Anyways, so a couple of the things I did like about the track here specifically is just I want to start with the fact that for the first half here so far, we've talked about several key defining characteristics off of each track that, basically takes center stage and, defining what a song is. Here, you really don't get a defining characteristic that is like a specific instrument. Here, it's the groove. And the groove here is just really, really, really tight. It's not a groove that's found within the Gaslight Anthem song bucket. Here, it's very driving, it's very purposeful, and I do like it. And the way that groove is written into the chorus, like that chorus is easily the best part about the whole track. And honestly, it's one of the best off the whole album. Like, it's just so like, I want to say infectious, but for me, it's so peaceful, and anytime I listen to it, like the chorus is "Don't wait too long to come home," and it just reminds me of like coming home, like whether it's like my literal home or like home down where my parents used to live. Well, where my parents live, where I used to live with my parents. Like, it just brings up that sense of nostalgia for me, and it always hits every single time. And the once again, I feel like I gotta report on every single bridge within the record here, but the bridge here is pretty good. I do like the build. And I do like overall like the way that it ends. Like it just wraps up things pretty effectively. Honestly, if I had to give this album this track here a rating, it would probably be a 4. Just got beaten out by 59 sound in terms of appreciation, but I'm a fan of Miles Davis and the Cool.
Again, I mentioned that I did not have a bottom anything on this album, and I still don't. But I'm a little lower on this track than you, and the reasons being that, first of all, I agree with you, Ryan, that the way that the groove is embedded into the song and into the chorus does work very well. Once this song gets going, it is hard to let go of. It is a very strong groove that is the defining moment of the song. And that chorus itself is very bright and spacious. Lyrically, to me, my envision of it was, because he's talking about, putting on red shoes and dress shoes and, going out in the town. Like, to me, that was sort of a, hey, baby, come on, let's go for a dance. Let's, hit the town and paint this town whatever color we want. Like, that's the interpretation I got from it, which in a way is a seduction in and of its own right. But the one thing that kind of held this song back for me was how it started. And granted, not every song is going to be judged based on its first impressions. Sometimes you need to get somewhere to get to a better place. But the way that this song starts, where Fallon is just singing about, like, he's dangerously close to just making the first verse just the title over and over again. It's like, Miles Davis, I'm all about that cool, Miles Davis bringing the cool. And it's just like, come on, man. Like, to me, that was like the low point of the entire album for me, because I was like, it just seems it seems nerdy in a way that isn't appreciable. It just feels like he's just shouting out random phrases, and the track is called Miles Davis and the Cool, and he starts by saying Miles Davis and the Cool, Alvin and the Chipmunks. Like, we get it. We get what you're about. But after that opening verse, it does get a whole lot better. And to the point where, again, you're just tapping your feet. It, once again, sounds perfectly produced and has a very driving groove and a driving beat that does reminisce, a guy and a girl hitting the town, dressed to the nines and ready to party. So I did appreciate the majority of this track. It's just that little beginning that's sort of irritating me, where it's just like, we get it.
Yeah, man. Before we boogie on into the back half of the record with the next track, which is The Patient Ferris Wheel, I have a question for you.
And what is that question, good sir?
If the dear listener out there in the podcast sphere has been swayed by the coolness that we're bringing with this review here right now today, and they want to help support the cool, what are some ways that they can help support what you and I do on a week in and week out basis?
Well, the way that they can support us, the best way they can support us, is by continuing to listen to this show. And the way they can do that is by finding us on their podcast platform of choice. We are on all the podcasting platforms: Apple Music, Spotify, we're on Pocket Cast, and also we're on YouTube. If you want to find us there, just look up Hey Listen to This Music Reviews, and that is where you can find us. And if you're on YouTube and you like what you're hearing, feel free to give us a like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for episodes every week. Also, if you are on the non-video sites where you can hear our podcast, do what you can to please the algorithmic beings that lord over the tech that produces our content. I could have been a better way of saying that, but we're going to go with it. It's halftime. And If you are listening and you want to share with a friend, you can do that as well, either by just sharing the link through a personal message, or if you want to do it on social media, you can do that too. We ourselves are on social media. We are on Instagram, we are on Facebook, we are on Threads, we are on Blue Sky, and if you follow us there, you can find links to our shows each and every week as well. And again, if you're looking for us on social media, the tag to look for is ttheylisten. Again, that is ttheylisten. That is our tag on social media and on YouTube as well. And speaking of ttheylisten, if you want to reach out to us directly, you can do so by emailing us at ttheylisten@gmail.com. That is ttheylisten@gmail.com. If you want to give us some feedback, some positive accolades, some not so positive accolades, which means they wouldn't be accolades, but I digress. Or if you want to perhaps suggest a future episode that we could do about your favorite album, or an album that you would like to have us talk about, because we are open to suggestions and requests. So again, that is ttheylisten@gmail.com. And again, if you like what you're listening to, share with a friend personally, share with the public, and just continue to support us doing what we do by listening every week. And for those of you who've done that so far through our first almost 100 full reviews, again, thank you. And again, thank you to Ryan for being such a good co-host and sort of spearheading this from the very beginning. It has been a blast, and I enjoy doing this each and every week.
And right back at you, man. I very, very much enjoy our dynamics, man. I feel like we make a good team in terms of like the kinds of music that we're bringing to the table and our ways of approaching musical dissection, and just the fun back and forth that we have overall. It makes it for a very, very entertaining time on my end as well. So, without any further ado, are you ready to kick it in to the back half of the record here, with the first track off of side B being The Patient Ferris Wheel?
Yes, The Patient Ferris Wheel. And we get a change in tempo, kind of, sort of, where unlike Miles Davis and the Cool, which was a little bit more groove-based, and the track before that, Film Noir, being slower, here you get more of the traditional, pedal to the metal type of sound from the Gaslight Anthem. And meanwhile, you get these lyrics in the song where, at first and second time I looked at them and reading them, thinking, these lyrics just seem very heavy in imagery, but not really in what it all means. And maybe that's the point. So, for those who do not know the lyrics to this song and have not heard this song, again, feel free to take the few minutes to stop and listen to this at your want. But basically, the lyrics are about how Fallon and the significant other are, walking away, or just maybe sitting in their car after having just been at the carnival or the fair or the midway, and they're just sort of reflecting on their status as friends, as lovers, and sort of wondering what the next step would be. If you've ever seen the movie Grease, think about that period of time before John Travolta starts singing "Oh Sandy," where they're just in the drive-in enjoying each other's company, and before anything actually happens, per se. Spoilers. That's the kind of feeling I got with this. Almost a sequel, in a sense, to the opening track off the Slint record that we talked about several weeks ago, where I sort of compared that to being at a carnival as well. So, sort of in the same vein, maybe just a little bit more at the nighttime, end of day type of feel to it. And to me, the lyrics do seem a little cryptic in their tone of voice, but I'm kind of almost wondering if that is the point. The fact that he's just naming all these different parts of an amusement park and comparing it to, just sort of the factual nature of where they're at and how the day was. It sort of creates this uneasy feeling about, okay, you're saying all these things, what does it all mean? but he's not saying anything, and perhaps that's what it all means. Like, this is just a moment in time captured in song form. So I did kind of appreciate that, but if I'm going to be completely honest with you, this is another track that falls into the Gaslight Anthem song bucket where it sounds good, I like it, but not enough to push it into that upper echelon of anything resembling a top 3 track.
Man, we're running out of tracks in terms of stuff that can be in your top 3. So pretty sooner or later, you're gonna have to start exploding with the appreciation here. Not that you haven't already, though. But in terms of the Patient Ferris one, though, I can agree with your assessment in terms of like this is a song that does belong in the Gaslight Anthem song bucket, as we've called it throughout this review here so far. But a couple of the things with this track here that kind of made it stand out for one reason or another. I'm going to start with your comments about the lyrics being very cryptic and how there's not really a specific meaning behind this song here. And I'm right there with you in terms of my overall like assessment as well. Like I basically alluded to the fact that this song here is basically about dancing in the rain, and that's about it. So, like, I did appreciate the lyrics nonetheless, and like the performances as well were pretty solid. Rewinding here a little bit in terms of like the overall song structure, I do love and appreciate the fire that's being brought with the track on the instrumental front, because we went from the ending of side A being Miles Davis and the Cool, where things are a little bit more toned down and more groove based. Here it seems like we're kicking things off with that a little bit more fire, a little bit more energy than what we found in like other typical songs that we've placed into the Gaslight Anthem song bucket. Like I do love how the guitars and the drums were creating what I described as a swinging bounce rock feel, which was an interesting descriptor that I threw at that instrumentation there. But I stand by it. And at the ends of verses, I did appreciate how the instrumentals did cut out, and you get that call and response dynamic. Again, very much Ryan Kearns coded 101 right there. The chorus was pretty good. I did love the overall feel of everything, and it's very much Gaslight being in their lane in terms of what they can do within their sound that's being brought to us on this record. But one thing that I did appreciate underneath of the like on the vocal front is the guitar part was really cool with the little licks that were occurring within random spurts of the chorus. Like I it's not very well pronounced, but if you listen in with earbuds and headphones, like you should be able to pick it up pretty nicely. And I did appreciate that. The way that the whole track ends is pretty good as well. Like I do like how things kind of speed up and just like come to a definitive close. So yeah, I did appreciate the song. I would say within the bucket that we've created so far, like the Gaslight Anthem song bucket, this is probably like creeping up towards like being like the leader of the pack, but it still is what it is. So I do appreciate it though.
Yeah, it's a solid track, and definitely one where if I'm listening to the album, it's nowhere near a skip territory. Like it's a good sounding song that does have, again, a lot of imagery that may just be that and may not have a deeper meaning, but sometimes you just got to write a song about being at a carnival all day, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. So with that being said, I'm going to kick it over to you for the next track, which is Casanova, baby.
Casanova, baby. That was one of my many nicknames in high school. So this track, though, it's interesting because like it's another one of those tracks that whenever you get into the chorus here, like it's very much Gaslight Anthem coded, where like you get that twinge of like nostalgia, but like trying to get like freedom and like escaping and everything like that. but you also get on the flip side a unique element that's introduced in this track here, where like for lack of a better descriptor, and you're gonna know what I'm talking about right away, is like kicking everything off is that shuffle boogie country drum rhythm. Like that was a very nice touch for me, and the way that drum beat is used to build upon the rest of the instrumentation in the verses. Like I did appreciate that. And diving further into the instrumentation in the verses, like you get those random accents like that were found, and I do like that. Those were executed pretty well. And also the guitar part in the verses, we're doing a like they were doing a pretty it's an effective a guitar part there. And yeah, speaking of the chorus, though, I did allude to the fact that it's very much Gaslight doing Gaslight things, but also in terms of Gaslight doing Gaslight things, I did very much enjoy the fact that I was able to zero in on the guitar and how, like in other tracks off this LP so far, that the guitar was actually echoing the vocals. So again, I very much enjoy that. It's more of a kink for me that I let on apparently, but outside of the choruses and the instrumentation, the background vocals found throughout the track are a nice touch. Not so impactful in terms of bringing a nice harmony or anything like that, but in terms of the context of it being heartland rock, punk rock, they do the job. They know what they're doing. In terms of taking a look at the lyrics and what the song is specifically about, I took it as a song about someone who works all day but still wants to show his partner a good time. And one of the lyrical highlights that I wanted to zero in on, when it comes basically within the first verse, where he talks about wanting to slipping out of his skin after working all day, and I did appreciate that, the transition point. I feel like we can all relate to that whenever we've had a very long day at work and we want to leave work at work and we want to just transition into a different mode of our evening. So I did appreciate that. It's a cool song. I'm going to stand by the fact that I'm not going to put it in the Gaslight Anthem song bucket for me.
So, my thoughts on Casanova, baby, I do agree with you wholeheartedly that, again, the little subtle changes that they make to the flow of the album without really changing their sound too much is a neat little trick that they have. And in this case, like you mentioned, the drums being out front with that shuffle beat does have that same sort of timbre that they are going for musically, but at the same time, it does feel different. It does feel a bit more westerny, a little bit more country-ish, and it does have a strong effect. And aside from that, and I do agree the guitar sounds good, the band sounds good, the only other thing I really have to add to my analysis of this song is, my goodness, there are a lot of references to other songs in this song. You want to talk about something that's Gaslight Anthem coded? Throughout this album, they've had, little references here and there to, people from the 50s or ideologies from the 50s or cars from the 50s. But here it gets a little bit towards the ridiculous side. Not so much that sinks the song for me, but just looking back at the lyrics, I was like, wow, they are, really trying to do a "We Didn't Start the Fire" in reverse or something like that, where they're just talking about all the songs they've heard that have some sort of part of their lives. So, again, at its very worst, it is a great song to listen to just because of that driving beat, just because of how it's produced, but it doesn't really elevate itself for me past that point, to the point where it's just oh, it's a standout track. To me, this is a very, very solid album track for me in Casanova, baby. And once again, as with the case of the first 7 tracks on this album, and now the 8th, it did not land in my top 3.
And for those of you who are keeping track at home, we only have 12 tracks off this LP. There's 4 tracks left because math. So Let's see.
Eventually, the bridge has got to give, and something has got to give way as far as be having a top three, because we have not gotten there
Okay.
yet.
All right. So I'm gonna make my mental lock what is not in your top three. I'm not gonna tell you until you fully reveal every single song, just to keep everyone in suspense here. But
Okay. And
uh,
for the record, your top song is yet to be revealed too. So the
yeah,
chances of a
yeah.
match are still in play.
Are we gonna high five whenever we eventually land? We could land within the unison of maybe us sharing the same top track. I don't know. Let's find out. Oh
Let's
man.
find out indeed. I'll go ahead and kick things off with the next track, which is Even Cowgirls Get the Blues. And for the second time on this album, we have a slower song, a bluesier song, and very much a guitar driven song. And I'm just going to come right out and say it. That guitar riff, that line that is being done on the song is awesome. Like, just the way it just cranks into that very bluesy-ish kind of guitar, just that like, this is a band that sounds well wise beyond their years. Like, I would put this almost in the same category again as like an Almonds, or maybe even like a Joe Bonamassa, maybe even I don't even know who else would, maybe like Latter Day Skinnerd, something like that. It's a very southern style bluesy type of feel on the guitar, and it works really, really, really well. Um, and the rest of the band sounds great too. The drums are very standard, but they kick in the right spots, particularly on the last part of the bridge, right before the last chorus. You get that really nice big drum fill that punches things right into the final finale. Um, Brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department. And lyrically speaking, this track is very, to me, the lyrics on this track, maybe just because the vocal performance by Fallon and the production job on this, but to me the lyrics seem more clear than they have been on the entirety of this album. Like, this is basically a song about a guy revisiting his glory days. And granted, this is probably a parallel to the song of the same name by Bruce Springsteen when he did Glory Days. The only difference is when Springsteen did it, it was upbeat, joyous, and very much wink, wink, nod, nod on purpose. This isn't wink, wink, nod, nod. This is close your eyes and probably start crying, because the way that they talk about how their friends grew up and, possibly had kids, went to the suburbs, had a couple babies, and yet here they are still loving old Tom Petty songs and driving old men crazy. Like, that is very much a, well, you got out of the system, I didn't, and I still love being in the system, and I'm just going to be this way for the rest of my life. It cuts so clearly and so openly, and it's just so impressive. And not only that, but the way that on the bridge it dials things back for a little bit, cuts out for a few seconds before driving things home in that final chorus, as I mentioned, is so effective. And this is just a really, really good bluesy track, where the band is in top form, and the switch to the bluesiness of it just feels so, so strong. So, surprise, surprise, finally, we have entered into top three territory with Even Cowgirls Get the Blues. And I have it at number 2.
Mad, mad, mad respect, my dude. So let me update my hey listen to the scorecard. So let's see. Even Cowgirls. I'll just leave it at that. All right. So for me, Even Cowgirls Get the Blues. Like, a lot of things that you touched upon, I'm right there with you. I would say I would maybe respectfully disagree a little bit in terms of the analysis on the lyrics. Like, you took it as like, hey, you got out of the system, but I'm very much in the system, and you almost kind of took it on the spin of like, oh, this is a very sad, like, reality that you're in. I think the narrator here that Brian's singing from the perspective of, he doesn't give a fuck, man. He's not giving up on his youthfulness, and he's just like, you know what, you guys are out there starting families, but you know what, I still enjoy Tom Petty songs, and I still enjoy stuff that gives me the sense of freedom. So that's at least my take on it. Who's to say, like, ultimately, like, well, I mean, you could have both if you have a healthy relationship with your significant other. You can have the best of both worlds, as Tana might say. But in terms of other moments outside of the lyrical analysis, you did a really good job, like just dissecting and like just highlighting what makes this song so enjoyable. The guitar riff, I agree with you, is so cool. I love it so much. And the way that the whole song flows, it's very much like a swing, flowy kind of track. And like the way that I envisioned this song being performed, it was almost like an old like bar with like a blues rock singer, and like the verses are where the singer's being more introspective, and then when the chorus hits, it's just like the band just ripping up, and like everyone's just having a good time in the bar. They're maybe like hoisting their drinks and like swinging back and forth. I don't know. I haven't really been to like a proper bar in years, but shout out to my college days. So outside of those moments, the section that you did highlight where things get pulled back towards the end of the track, and then like you get hit right with the chorus, I agree with you. That was very effective. I do like the song a whole lot. Maybe it would be tied with a fourth ranking in terms of song contention, but yeah, I'm still a fan of even Cowgirls Get the Blues, and I very much appreciate that this did land in your top three.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that it sounds like you're at a bar, and I don't say this disrespectfully, I say this very, very, very respectfully. This sounds like it should be the soundtrack to a beer commercial. Like, I could very much see, like, any of the big brands, or maybe even a smaller brand, because it doesn't always have to be about the big guys, using this as the musical backdrop for two dudes shooting pool at a table, drinking to the old times, and roll credits. So yeah, that's sort of the envision that I have listening to this song, and it's not a bad one at all. It's a really, really good bluesy track that I appreciate very much. That being said, I will kick it on over to you for track 10 on this album, the 59th Sound by the Gaslight Anthem, entitled Meet Me by the River's Edge.
I'll meet you by the river's edge tomorrow, man. No, I digress. So for me, Meet Me by the River's Edge. I enjoy the song quite a bit, dude. Like again, we're kind of, I would say, maybe shifting back into the lane of Gaslight Anthem song territory in terms of like just the overall sonic presentation. Like for me, this is a very much like a driving feel kind of a song, but I do like what it's bringing to the table. Like the way that the whole song is structured, and like you just get the sense of just like a sense of urgency that's created with the guitar and the drums and Brian's vocals as well. Like they're all creating a interesting sonic palette that add to the song's texture very very nicely. The chorus I found to be one of the best off the record as well. Maybe one day, whenever I have a review like this where I'm like, oh, this is the best chorus. This is one of the best choruses. Maybe I'll actually do like a proper ranking of the choruses. Next review, I'm gonna hold myself to that. Anyways, so yeah, the chorus kind of gives way to the meaning of the song for me, in terms of like the song here. I took it as like a song about not wanting to give up everything for a dream or love, and I kind of like that sense of urgency, and it's very much tapping into the mindset of like youthfulness of like, you know, falling in love, being a teenager, being like, you know what, hey, we're just gonna get out of this town, we're just gonna make it on our own, we're gonna meet by the river's edge, we're gonna wash these sins away, or else we won't come back again. Like, you know, I did like that. Genius had a weird annotation about the fact that this was like the Sally in this song here could have been the same Sally that is featured in Oasis's "Don't Look Back in Anger," and I'm like, okay, guys, not everything's a song reference. Calm on, calm down. Outside of those moments, I do like the moments in the verses where the guitars are doing unique lines. Like I did find that to be pretty great. Overall, though, Meet Me by the River's Edge, it's a very much an enjoyable song. But if I had to be honest with myself, and I tend to be, this is a song that definitely goes into the Gaslight Anthem song bucket. How about you?
So, in a sense, it does go into the Gaslight Anthem song bucket because, like you said, this does pretty much fall into the same categories as a lot of the other songs, with the key being what it is, the tempo being what it is, and everything just sounding very much pedal to the metal. And on the other hand, what separates this track from those others is a few things. First of all, unlike the others, it feels like it has a bit more of an ebb and flow of dynamics. And I think that's one of the biggest things that this track has going for it, because instead of just sort of blasting everything and waiting for everybody to join in, things come in parts, particularly in the opening where you have Fallon basically singing by himself with just a little bit of guitar before the drums are going to get the guitar kick in. And then after that, they dial back to let him sing a little more. I think Fallon's vocals on this track are the best on the whole album, clearly by far. And what makes it more impressive is how he tends to rise, particularly on the bridge with his vocals, and does so without straining himself, does so without, reaching for anything. And lyrically speaking, I've talked about how this band very much emulates Bruce Springsteen. Here, I think they reach their peak Springsteensian form, because granted, you do get references like, the fact that they're meeting by the river's edge, Springsteen had an album called The River, talking about, No Surrender My Bobby Jean. There's two more references for Springsteen right there. But at the same time, what really makes this Springsteensian, and I'm going to keep butchering that word until it becomes a real word, is the fact that in the chorus you have this feeling of, like I said, meet me by this river's edge. We're going to wash our sins away or we won't come back again. No retreat, no regrets. Meet me by the river's edge. To me, that's not just, copying Springsteen, that is emulating him spiritually, because that's the same type of feeling that Springsteen himself writes in songs like Born to Run, where, tonight we're just going to go out in a blaze of glory and there's nothing's going to stop us, because if we don't go now, we're never going to leave. And to me, that is a crucial difference that, weirdly enough, takes a song that musically does sound like a lot of the other tracks that preceded it and elevates it all the way to being my number one favorite song on this album. I love it.
Oh, man. All right, so we're definitely not going to high five.
No, we're not.
And full disclosure, before we, before I give my little comments on your comments about Meet Me by the River's Edge, like this was a song that I kind of pegged as not being in your top three, so I misfired on that one, but it is what it is, man. So now we still have yet to, Sometimes you misfire, but we still have to see what of the remaining tracks here don't fall into your top three. But for lack of a better segue, here's Looking at You, Kid.
Right back at you. So the penultimate track on this album, Here's Looking at You, Kid, This is a weird song, not in the fact that it's a weird song, but it definitely stands out as being sounding different from the rest of the album because on the one hand, it definitely has a similar shuffle to Casanova Baby, a very country and western shuffle. But on the other hand, it's a lot more subdued than Casanova Baby was. Like here, it almost feels like a train off in the distance type of beat. And, you're just sort of, everything sort of is in the background with Fallon singing. And what's amazing about Fallon's vocal on this, because again, I say that Meet Me by the River's Edge is his best vocal performance on the album. I stand by that. But this one's close because here he is sounding like he is in his 40s or 50s singing this song. And it's very low register, and he pulls it off very nicely. Where he's basically talking about, he starts talking about how in the beginning, there was this girl that, he would have been a fool for on the first day of school. And, she had her chance to be the one for him. And now that he's gone and become successful, hey, much like in the Crystal Ship, I'll drop a line if necessary. So kind of starts there and just goes on to this sort of self-reflective realization that, hey, maybe there really is no turning back. Here we are at the moment of chaos. Here we are at the moment of reflection. And he does sound very good singing this. The lyrics do get a little referencey and wordy again, but ultimately to me, this track is a very nice come down from the intensity of Meet Me by the River's Edge. And again, the way it sounds, again, not just Fallon singing with this low timbre, but the way guitar is very subdued, the way the drums are moving at a fast pace, but they're not loud, they're very soft. It creates for a very unique sound that I did appreciate. Not enough to get in my top 3. This is not my third favorite song off of the album, so spoilers, which one could it be? But I did appreciate it for being probably the softest song on the album and probably one of the more intimate sounding songs on the album that is driven mostly by the sincere, earnest vocal of Brian Fallon.
And I think that fact alone makes me appreciate the song a lot. Like, whenever you said that Meet Me by the River's Edge was your favorite vocal performance by Fallon, I instantly thought about this track here because Brian has nothing to hide behind in terms of instrumentation. Like he's basically exposing his lyrics, his thoughts, his feelings, and he does so very effectively. And the way that I took the lyrics and the overall story that he's telling here, Genius.com did allude to the fact that this is this could be interpreted as a suicide letter written in 3 parts addressing 3 separate people because in every verse he's addressing somebody specifically. And I kind of agree with him. It just seems like with every story he's telling, there's a sincere feeling of guilt and remorse. One section I do want to highlight that was one of my favorites off the whole track was the section where he's talking about Anna and how a thief stole his heart while she was making up her mind. And I hear she lives in Brooklyn with the cool, and that could be a callback to Miles Davis and the Cool, the one of the previous tracks off the record. So I did appreciate that callback. So yeah, just the overall lyric and vocal performance, and just the fact that this could be interpreted as a suicide letter written to 3 separate people. I kind of did dig that. I mean, and the way that I really it just seems like in every single end of every single verse it's it's just say tell her it's all right, and in the outro you get the lyrics, it's hard to tell you this, here's looking at you, kid. Yeah, it's very melancholic, and I do appreciate that quite a bit. Outside of the lyrics and the vocal performance, the pullback on everything on the instrumental front is great. I do like the solo guitar, how it's like almost like it is definitely pushed back. And also, you get that subtle background of the drums, creating like just a little rhythms. It's just a little grounding effect. And if I'm not mistaken, the drums were played with brushes in this track here, and like that again. I very effective. I do like that quite a bit. But as much as this song was effective and how much it's looking at me, kid, it's not my favorite track off the whole album.
I had a sinking suspicion when Meet Me by the River's Edge wasn't your number one. I had a sinking suspicion that Here's Looking at You, Kid wasn't going to be that either, and that we would agree on at least one top 3 track. So, with no further ado on that front, Ryan, I will send it over to you to talk about the finale, which, for those keeping score, would be your favorite track on the album and my third favorite track, The Backseat. Floor is yours.
So, talk about a song that is a very definitive closer to this whole record. Like, everything just comes out of the gate very big, very thunderous with that guitar part. It's so defiant, and how that guitar part leads into the verse, like, and how Brian sounds like he's riding high on like momentum and like the youthful spirit, and like just looking back on how youth was and how he's been able to navigate adulthood, like it just, for that feeling alone that I get listening to the song, especially coming right out of the gate, it's instantly a favorite track for me. I could stop right there and let you go on to your side of the story, but I just the overall, like, I did say, look, the song in a sense was about navigating adulthood, and just like the overall feeling of like, the motion of like in the chorus, trying to find some room to breathe in the backseats. Like, some people could say that this is an allusion to, like, making out in the backseat, because that's what you do when you're a teenager. But no, like, for me, like, the notion of trying to find some room to breathe while navigating adulthood, man, that hits a little bit close to the bone, dude. So, and a couple of the lyrics that I do want to highlight, though, is the lyric where he's talking about riding the fever out of Austin and dreaming of California lights. Metaphorical, like, uses there of like escaping, like, your hometown and like being trapped in a key and dreaming of something better. So no shade to Austin. I mean, I honeymoon in Austin. I'm sure it's a lovely city, and also, like, not trying to highlight California. I'm sure that's a lovely state. I mean, I've heard stuff about them, but I'm not going to digress. This is not a political podcast. Anyways, just other things I do like about this track here, like the bridge here, very effective, and yeah, just the overall like way that things just conclude, and it just, everything sounds like a final statement. I cannot stress enough, like, this is just an instant treat for me to listen to every single time. Favorite track off the record by a country mile, my dude.
In mad respect to you, as you may, again, have noticed on your scorecards, this is my third favorite track on the album for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, especially the way that not only does the band, like you say, come out swinging, to me, that drum part at the beginning, the very herky-jerky way that the drums pound in with the alternating hi-hat and snare drum 16ths. To me, this makes this sound like the most modern rock track on the entire album, and I'm not saying that's like the reason I love it so much, because it's not, but it does provide a really strong, powerful point where you're just like, oh, the band sounds amazing, and they sound amazing right away. Yes, cool, awesome, love it. But much like Meet Me by the River's Edge, the strength of the band and the strength of the song that makes it stand out is once again the ebb and flow, because even though the band does, very much ride along this momentum, like you say, there are moments where it does dial back. The moments where things get quieter again, a bit more reflective, and the chorus of "End of the Backseat," we're finding some room to breathe. Comes across quieter and a bit more exhaustive before swinging things back in. And it really does, again, showcase this band's strength from a purely performative standpoint. But then you get to the lyrics, like you mentioned. To me, the idea of "end in the backseat," we're finding some room to breathe. Like, again, that could be about making out, but it could be about adulthood. It could also very just well be about anxiety. Like the fact that, you're in the backseat of perhaps the world, or in the backseat of, the people that you're still kids to as adults, and you're just trying to find a place to be yourself and to stand out, as it were. So I think even at face value, the lyrics are very deep and effective, and I really did appreciate them a lot. So yeah, I'm right there with you. This track really, really rules. It is a great way to close this album out, and it is in my top 3, completing the top 3 at number 3.
I feel like with the slight discrepancy of this being my favorite and this being your third favorite, we can metaphorically fist bump. Like, it's not a high five, but like, we can agree, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
that
it's not quite the pin. I mean, we have agreed on the top tracks on albums before, not quite this time, but the fact that it's both in our top 3 is a nice way to round this album out. And because we have rounded this album out, 12 tracks up, 12 tracks down, scorecards filled out, we just got one thing left to say, and that is...
we did it.
We did it, man. We traveled back to 1959 and found out what it sounded like with the Gaslight Anthem. That's not actually true, but it sounded cool, much like Miles Davis. So I'll go ahead and go first with my overall thoughts on this record. And I don't know, this one's kind of a tough one for me, only because there is a lingering issue I have with it, which is the repetitiveness and the sort of autopilot that it goes into roughly around the midway point. Not that it ever sounds bad. Like, at the very worst, this album is, like you say, a perfect driving soundtrack. The band is produced wonderfully. There's not a bad note on here, and everything sounds good front to back. Does it sound the same in a lot of patches? Yes. Does it feel the same in a lot of patches? Yes. But is it bad in any patches? Not really. And in many other patches, it is quite good. The lyrics are strong. The feel of power is there, and it definitely does feel a lot of the times like when they're at full autopilot, where they're just sort of doing it like they usually do it, like professionals, it still feels there's still that edge of they're singing it as if their lives depend on it. So I think this album is really, really, really good. Not a 10 out of 10 for me, but very much a strong album in its own right. I'm going to give the 59 Sound by the Gaslight Anthem a solid 8.5 out of 10.
And for me, coming from this review, my background on this album with a bias standpoint, because it's an album and it's a band that I very much enjoyed in the past, like I alluded to at the start of this review. A lot of the songs, I did get some deeper meaning thanks to doing this review, like the 59 Sound being about the car crash and the death of his friend, and Here's Looking at You Kid being essentially a suicide letter written in 3 parts, and a couple of, I can go on naming about each individual track. I was able to find a deeper meaning too, so I'm very thankful I was able to do the review, and I was able to pick up on little moments here or there that made each song unique. And also, the big songs for me, Backseat, fantastic song. I will always love that song. And Great Expectations and 59 Sound. Obviously, in my top 3 for very solid reasons. They're very great songs. I cannot ignore the fact, though, that just like you, the band does shift into their own individual lane, and they go into cruise control and they go in autopilot that you alluded to. So it did prevent me from fully going all the way up to giving this album a 10 out of 10, even though it's very much in the Ryan Kearns canon in terms of like my musical, like, background and like, upbringing, for lack of a better descriptor there. But I will say, though, I'm going to go just maybe like one titch higher than you in terms of an overall rating. So for the 59 sound by the Gaslight Anthem, I'm going to give it a solid 9 out of 10.
Very nice, very nice. Back-to-back 9s for you after 1/3 of that the week before, which is, nice. But your 9 out of 10 and my 8.5 out of 10 average out to an 8.75 out of 10 for the 59th sound by the Gaslight Anthem, because
math
works. Everybody does not discriminate. It does not hate. It's just math. Now, as far as the next album recommendation goes, I could cop out and recommend a Springsteen album, because that's clearly what these guys are trying to make with the 59th sound, but I'm not going to do that, because to me, the one album I can think of that is a parallel to this as far as sonic blast, hard rock, consistency, and really just great driving music is an album that we've talked about before on this show. And I'm not doing it for the sake of self-cannibalization. I'm just putting it out there because it sounds very much in the same vein. And that is Against Me's Transgender Dysphoria Blues, a great hard rock record that very much rocks at the same level of intensity and consistency as this one. Granted, the lyrical themes are considerably different, so do take note of that. But if you're just looking for a great record to put on blast at the top of your speakers and drive 100 miles an hour, actually don't do that. Don't drive 100 miles an hour. That's illegal. But the point being, if you want something to crank up while driving down the highway too, that is the album I would point to next after this one. So Transgender Dysphoria Blues by Against Me. If you like the 59 sound by the Gaslight Anthem, that is where you should go next.
It's only illegal if you get caught. Anyways, in terms of my next album recommendations, because I very much co-signed that Against Me recommendation, so solid job there. I'm just not going to overthink it. I could overthink it, but, just go to their 2012 record that we talked about at the start of this review, Handwritten. It's a very, very excellent, album. It's right up there with this album here, specifically in terms of appreciation. I might have more quote nostalgia for that record being Handwritten. It's weird to think about nostalgia 2012, but it's 13 years ago. So yeah. At this rate, oh man, simpler times. So yeah, excellent songs off of that record. Very much another driving record, especially with the lead single off that record being 45. So yeah, I'm going to keep it easy. Handwritten by the Gaslight Anthem would be my next album recommendation, if you did in fact enjoy the 59 sound by the same band.
So listener, to recap, we gave the 59 sound by the Gaslight Anthem an average of an 8.75 out of 10 based on my 8.5 and Ryan's 9. And our next album recommendations based off the 59 sound are my recommendation, which is Transgender Dysphoria Blues by Against Me, and Ryan's, which is Handwritten by the Gaslight Anthem. So check those albums out if you want to appreciate some more hard rock and roll and great sounding music. And yeah, man, what a review. We talked about the 59 sound, and hopefully this makes up for what I did 2 weeks ago.
Like I said, whenever you said like you were quote unquote making up for the Wiz Khalifa review. Like, you don't have to apologize. We're both adults. We're both friends. We don't take things personally. So, perfectly fine. But the gesture is noted, and I do appreciate that. This review, my friend, it was a blast.
It was a blast, and I'm glad we talked about it because even though I painted this as a bit of an alms or a olive branch to you, the two albums that we had up for discussion are both albums that I like as well. So I was just as excited to talk about this album in particular that we talked about today. But I have chosen. It is done. We have one more thing to do before we kick this review into bed. Ryan, the mini-series continues. Where are we going next?
Man, this mini-series is going to go on until like the end of the year, man. So I very much appreciate that. So for those of you who are tuning in for the very first time and are wondering what this mini-series is, like a few reviews back, I threw the challenge to myself. It's like, for those of you who could scroll back in the catalog of what on that app that you're listening to us on right now, it's prior to the Suede review. I'm forgetting what the specific album that came out of my camp that that we reviewed at that point. But the Suede review was the start of the miniseries, and that miniseries indeed was me picking specific albums that were released prior to the year 2000, so like older albums, just to challenge myself to dive into artists that I want to dive into, explore like impactful years in music. So yeah, it's been an absolute joy so far. And so the year that we're going to travel to next, Matthew, so with the Doors, we were in the year of 1967. We're just going to go ahead 2 years and go to 1969. So we're going to still stay in the 60s. So the way that I'm going to have you pick between these two albums that were from the year of 1969, just going to keep it very easy, very basic. I want to have you pick a state from where the band that made this album came from. The two states are New York or Michigan?
Ooh, ho, 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 ho. Ooh, that is. Ah, boy, I'm. I feel I might know what New York is, but I also might know what Michigan is, and Michigan sounds a little bit more intriguing because I have a feeling I know exactly which album we're talking about, so I'm going to go with Michigan.
All right, man. So for our next review, we're going to have a real cool time because we're going to want to be your dog.
Ooh.
In that, we're going to be discussing the debut album from the American rock band called The Stooges, and it's a self-titled release. So yeah, man, we're gonna be talking about some Iggy Pop for our next review, man. I am so excited.
I'm excited too, and funny enough, I'm the only one who, well, you might know this as well, but I'll say it out loud. It's funny enough, back-to-back reviews from you that feature self-titled albums, self-titled debut albums for bands that were on Elektra Records.
You know, sometimes I just amaze myself, man.
But yeah, I am excited to discuss the Stooges next week on Hey Listen to This, because they're a band that I've kind of been intrigued by, but never really took the time to listen to. So now is the time to listen to this.
Indeed, man. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have never listened to the debut album by the Stooges, released in 1969, make sure that you do so before next week's review. That way you can have opinions about the album, and then you can have opinions about the opinions that me and Matt are bringing to the table. But, yeah, for lack of a better, outro here, man, I don't know, I feel pressured when I come out with, clever things to, say for the outro in terms of just referencing specific lyrics or things that came from the album that we're specifically reviewing in the review. I mean, I just put such great expectations on myself.
Hey, listen, man, you don't feel bad. No regrets.